Hi, Julian.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's all right. Everything's just kind of crazy lately. Um, yeah, just life, I suppose.
Okay. So I know we kind of got to know each other last session, and you told me a little bit about yourself and that you're a college student, and you study. And are you working as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have kind of a lot on your plate.
hmm
So do you want to just kind of give me more details about that you're crazy or what's going on or what your days look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, school's really hard, and it's new for me. I haven't been in school for a couple years, so like going to class and doing homework and stuff is just really overwhelming. As far as like trying to get back into it. Um, but I still live at home with my parents. Um, and things have just been so messed up. Like, even when, I mean, I guess it's been going on for a long time, but it's like my parents, they need to get a divorce and they're not. They talk about it and they fight and they be mean, but then they just stay and act like nothing happened. Um, and like my dad's out of work, so money's not real, it's not real great, and I can only work part-time because I'm going to school, but it's just hard. I have my brother guys living in the house too, and there's just so many of us, and when money gets tight, everything's hard.
How's school going?
School's okay. I think, I don't know, school's school. They think that's all you have. They think that that's life. They don't realize, or I don't know, they don't even care that there's life, life outside of school after you get out of class. Um, and that school is not life, you know. So while it's good and I make it work, it's like it's a burden because it doesn't stop. You can't excuse your way out of school. You can't, if you don't have gas money, you can't call in broke, you know. Um, and that's so it's good as far as like I'm getting it done, but it also sucks because it's stressful.
And then how can you tell me a little more about your job?
Um, my job's good. I like my job. It just takes time and energy. Um, I work with kids, and so that's good. Um, we've been having issues like with paperwork and stuff like that, and so that is added stress as far as getting into the payroll system and stuff like that. The paperwork process is just really hard and convoluted, and um, you know, people just can be lame sometimes. So, I mean, it's good. I like the work. I work with kids, and so that's a good thing. But it's also stressful, and money's been tight, so work hasn't really been helping much with that because they're not paying me yet. But well, I'm hoping that'll come together, I guess, at some point.
So it kind of sounds like we've identified three different areas that are kind of taking up a lot of your time. So it sounded like, home life with your parents and their situation, and then your schooling, and then your work. So is that what you've kind of identified these three areas?
Yeah.
So is there a way so that we can kind of just prioritize, like what do you feel in which area is kind of taking up most stress or most time or feels like a kind of presents a issues?
Um, I don't know. I feel like the my family life is always what's most important, you know. And so that's hard. It's real distracting to think about money and relationships and my parents' marriage and my brother has kids and so they're in the house too. And so everything, everything is hard. Like everything about the family is, kind of stressful right now. Um, and that just overflows. It doesn't seem like that would be the most important thing, but it overflows into everything. I can't do my schoolwork because I can't focus.
So can you think about times that these problems were not in the family? That there are times in which things were feeling good about your family relationships?
Um, I think probably when I was like a young teenager, things were pretty balanced. Everybody was working, and like my mom was in school, my dad was working, um, and all us kids were, we were just kids. We were playing sports, like we were at the baseball field till after dark, because that's when practice ended. Um, that was just the way it was. Life was different
Are there clear ways that it was different? Like, are there just memories that you have that you just know that it was different than how it is right now? Or maybe even things about the past that you might want to continue into right now, into your present situation?
then. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was less stressful. The family was less stressed out, so everybody was happier. Everybody. It's hard when everybody is just stressed out for us to just have a good time or enjoy each other. Uh, we used to sing in the car and like on our way everywhere. Like all of us kids and our parents would sing, and it was just like that. We talked about our day and we shared things. Um, but now everybody's just stressed out and pissed off all the time. Um, that it's just hard every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So stress is something that kind of seems to be a consistent theme in your family's dynamic. Can you tell me about the stress that you're experiencing that's most immediate, that's happening, that's taking up the most amount of your time, and kind of really put it into words, into feelings or actions or parts that we can kind of move around?
I think that the main stress is finances. Um, because with that, then um, it gives more mobility to the issues as far as just little things. If we can throw money at some of the problems, then the other problems that we can't throw money at, we can work out. But because there's so many problems and no money to throw at them, it's just a ball, of just bullshit.
So I heard you mention about your working, and that there's some obstacles in your work, and that are stopping you from getting pay that you might be able to put towards your family's finances. Mm-hmm. So can you just tell me a little bit more about what's going on there?
Yeah, and I think it's like a human resources thing, and I think the lady, the school secretary was supposed to process my paperwork, but she didn't do it in a timely fashion, and so when they had me start, they didn't actually have clearance from payroll to get me to start, and so I put in the hours, but they're not able to process that into a paycheck because they didn't actually wait for my background check and other paperwork to clear. They thought that it was more important that I be on campus and working with the children. um, than for it to go through the appropriate channels,
Hmm.
which I don't agree with at all. If they had asked me, I would have not agreed to that. I would have said that was inappropriate. Um, but they didn't give me that choice, so I kind of got thrown into it unwillingly, and now I'm in this situation.
So that's unfortunate. It sounds to me like you did some of the work that you can, but it also sound. I just don't want us to overlook that. It sounds like you're a very valuable part of that team. That they wanted you to be a part of that team, and they wanted you to interact and do a job with the children. That seems like they really value your ability to work with those kids, and it sounds like they wanted you to be a part of it, but then there's these repercussions of them wanting it so bad that they didn't take care of the things they needed to do before they could, take advantage of your wonderful work abilities. But going back to what I originally asked is, are there steps that you have taken to try to take care of this?
Yeah, I've met with the school secretary. I've also met with the principal. Um, I've called district. I've also called human resources and payroll. And so I'm hoping that they are all collaborating to get this process, rolling and moving forward in a positive way. I guess I could hope that that's.
Is this a place that you want to continue to work at?
Well, it's work I'd like to continue to do. Um, I enjoy working with children. I especially find value in working in the underserved populations and areas, um, and potentially undervalued populations and areas. But when it comes down to it, I'm definitely questioning whether or not this place and these people are the ones who I am supposed to be working with. Um, I'm kind of one that believes in like a natural flow of things, um, and then when it doesn't seem like it's just flowing smoothly, there's probably a reason why. So in some ways, I feel like it's swimming against the current, and in some ways, I feel like nothing good comes easy. So I think I'm just kind of caught in a weird place.
Well, I did notice though that when you were talking about working with children, there was a little bit of a change in your voice, and it sounded like you felt like that is something that that you want to do, that you want to work with children. And so I think that's a really positive thing, is that you have this idea of what you're good at, and how you can kind of shape it into an actual job.
Mm-hmm.
But I did also notice that when you started talking about the administrative part of it, that's where it sounded like there was some stress and some issues around that. But it also sounds like you've taken all the action that you can as of this moment to try to take care of that problem. So does that seem like, of the three situations that we talked about, do you feel like you have done what you can in your work environment to try to, resolve some of these issues?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so going back to the other two, so we talked a little bit about family, and then we talked a little bit about schooling. So is there anything in school that is that same kind of question? Anything that is really pertinent? Any immediate stress that's happening around school?
I think just the fact that it's coming to the end of the semester and like everything's due. And while I have it planned out where like I know what I have to do first, I know like my schedule of okay, I'm gonna give this attention on this day because it's due 3 days later. Like I have that planned out. It's just that the distractions and everything has kind of been like, well, I planned for 3 hours to work on a thing. Like I stress for the first two and then I work on it the last one. And I mean, I'm efficient and I get it done in the time that I allotted myself, but that's 3 hours worth of work in 1 hour. That's stress. That's like a lot of stress. And I'm at the point where there's not 6 more weeks of school left, so those deadlines aren't next week. They're this week, because I have more next week. And so it just kind of is at that point where it's like, okay, it's go time, like there's no way to wiggle out of this, no more procrastination, and yeah, so it's sort of part of that snowball.
So you mentioned distractions. Can you just name some of those distractions?
Well, the finances we talked about, my family stuff. I know at home things, kind of get crazy and a little bit emotional, so I try to, like minimize my time there. But once again, I'm a homebody. I like to be home. Home is where I want to be. So when I'm studying and having to stay away from home, like that's just more stuff, But it seems to work as far as like school. So I try to stay away from home to manage my schoolwork and just take care of that separately. Compartmentalize, I guess, in a way. Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
So it sounds like you're naming home as one of your main distractions.
Yeah, I would say home life because I think everything kind of comes from that. And then and all those are external things, then I'm my own person, separate from finances and family stresses and school stresses. I have my own love relationship. I have my friendships. I have my own desires, and my own wants and my own what I want to go do. And that has nothing to do with those responsibilities. But those came this late in this conversation, even because I can't even get there in my brain, So, like, those things got way placed to the wayside, like far after homework.
So, let's think about a time when stress wasn't so big and you were able to focus on all those wants and desires and needs that you just listed. Can you tell me about a period in your life where your days were good and you were able to manage that stress and not that it went away, but that it was manageable? So can we just kind of think about days like that, or times or situations where you were able to kind of not be overwhelmed by that stress?
I think when I first got out of high school, I kind of like left my family behind, and I was working and I was in a relationship that was, healthy and positive. And I kind of lived on my own. It was me, my partner, and our dog. And, me and him would go camping and we would do, things that young adults do. And we worked during the week. And so that was probably the most mellow, just living for me kind of time that I had, definitely.
So if you were to, tomorrow get to choose as how much your family was involved in your daily life, what would be an ideal relationship with your family?
Um, Neighbors, where we are close and have access to each other, and can share resources if we need to, but also be able to have our own lives and relationships, um, our own finances, our own um, stresses. You know, I think that combining them all together uh, just really creates a big pool.
Hmm.
Definitely.
So you mentioned neighbors. You mentioned being able to share things. And you mentioned a little bit of some autonomy as well. So, are there ways that you can achieve any of that in your current situation right now?
Um, yeah, I mean, some of what I've been trying to do, like staying away and being separate, helps because it gives everybody else a chance to like develop their own routines too. Because when I come home, I'm home now, and so I become a part of the mix. And if they're gonna go to the store, it's okay because I'm home, so they can leave the kids or leave the pot on the stove. Um, but those are things that interfere. Those are details that overflow into my bubble per se, or so to speak, um, and so in some ways I've been trying to separate, and be a little bit more on my side of the fence, um, and that does help. It helps create balance. It helps them, deal with their own daily moment to moment issues, without being a distraction to me.
Do you have space in your home that is your space?
Yeah.
You do. Okay, so can you kind of describe times in which you are in that space? What is when you go to that space?
So when I go home, usually there's like a half hour or an hour where like I just am in my own bubble. Usually I go straight upstairs, change, just be in my own space, cool down from the day, and that time's generally respected. As long as I don't come out of my space and be in the common areas. Um, I'm left to my own like thoughts and reflections and just winding down from the day. So that's cool, definitely. Um,
Do you ever utilize that space when you actually need space?
I do, but I think because my family's so close, like it's very apparent when my space is being used to um, like take a break from the family, and taking a break from the family is not necessarily something that's valued, as far as like being seen as a good thing. That's not really, they probably would say things like, she's up there having an attitude, or something like that, somewhere along those lines.
What would be, an ideal reaction for them when you were in that space? How would you want them to react?
She's in her room. Not really. I think I'm one of those people that really, in a lot of times, wish I was invisible. Like I really wish people were not affected by what I do, um, because I don't want them to be aware of me. Like I don't want them to know that I'm upset or that I'm in my room because I don't want to be around the family. I kind of wish they would just be like, whatever, you know. Um, but I don't know. That's my own personal thing too.
And does any of your family members share that same kind of feeling?
No, I don't think so. Um, my mom is kind of um, like that in that if she uh, is wearing a new dress or if she lost weight, she doesn't really want you to notice that. Um, she quit cigarettes after like 30 years and she didn't even tell anybody. And not because she didn't want to, it's because she didn't want to be asked about it. And so, in some ways, it is just a personal, a privacy thing, a personal preference for how, you know, I guess we'd kind of like to be engaged or not, you know.
And then when you guys just are, so it sounds like you share a lot of common space with your family, and you also share kind of common issues or struggles with your family. It sounds like you guys are contributing as a family.
Yeah.
So, do you guys discuss finances as a family?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We really try to communicate how we're resolving the issues. Um, we try not to dwell on whether or not the money is there currently because we're all hardworking individuals. So, in some ways, you just have to have faith that you've taken care of certain details and that the other details are either not 100% necessary or the resources will be provided for that. And so, in that way, we try to share. So, like, if I was able to cover the car payment or the electric, then I'll share. And so, hey guys, I paid the thing today, so everybody can go, oh, okay, cool, thanks, and stop worrying about all that. And so, in that way, we do try to be that support for each other. I think it's probably the main reason we actually stay together and pool our resources as often as we do.
So having your family in times when you guys need to share, and in times where you guys can like approach things as a system or as a community, you value your family.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the point. That the reason we stay together is because we value that, and we don't always do it out of need. So we know that things are okay when nobody's talking about money because there is really no need to talk about money. And so when we are talking about money, it's already a stressful situation because of the way that we are. It's automatic that everything gets paid for. But if there's no money there, then we have to talk about where the resources are coming from and that stress,
And then it sounds like you guys have you been able to kind of prioritize what needs to get paid the most and what can kind of wait? Sounds like you guys already utilize that tool.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I do when I'm in my schooling is that I pay for my rent for the whole semester ahead of time. So at least that housing issue is not and not an issue. And so in that way, we have that secured. We also have electric secured. And so that, that really helps. That totally helps as far as, it totally helps as far as,
I feel like we're almost done.
as far as what we, as far as what we're worried about. So when we do get to talk about money, we can actually keep it in perspective. As far as like, is this a need? Are we, we can be realistic. Like, do we have to pay that? Nah, maybe not.
Well, it sounds like to me that you've been able to provide your family with a lot of security. That the things that you that need or basic needs are always met. That you have a home, that you have community, that electricity is always going to be on. So there sounds like you guys have been able to maintain sort of a sanctuary for your family. And despite that you have stress and issues, the very basic things are not part of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I think for us, we can kind of start to evaluate the things beyond those basic, that we don't want to just meet our basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be, more than surviving or more than just doing okay. And so I think the more that we meet, the more that we kind of prioritize these problems and get to the root of them. And so, like you've already identified, that the stress in the home really bleeds into everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we can continue to talk about that and continue to really name those things and understand them, then we can kind of continue to look at the resources that you already have, the tools that you already explained to me, and just better tap into them and better build that toolbox that it sounds like you already have, some tools in there.
Yeah.
So, next session, I hope that we can kind of continue to talk about this, and you can kind of continue to take note of the things that are immediate in your life that we need to kind of tackle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I feel better. I appreciate talking about this. I think talking about the details of it helps because, we can get so wrapped up in our problems and like everything's hard and everything gets overwhelming. But when you pull it apart, like we were just doing, it's like I can see what parts are in control and what parts aren't in control. So that's cool.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing.